We're live. We're live. And we have Amanda here tonight, you guys. I'm super excited. So selfishly, I, really wanted Amanda here, but I also, obviously, she's such a great resource, such a powerhouse in the OCD community. So Amanda, first of all, thank you so much for being here with us. But yeah, so she's otherwise known on Instagram. I think it's anxiety OCD treatment.
Yeah, perfect.
I always get confused whether it's OCD anxiety or anxiety OCD treatment. So yeah, Amanda, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll jump into the live.
Sounds good. So as Jenna said, my name is Amanda Petra-Gardner. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor in Kansas. I specialize in the treatment of OCD and OCD-related disorders, so from hoarding to body dysmorphic disorder, body-focused repetitive behaviors, all that fun stuff. Also licensed in Colorado and can see clients in Florida and hopefully a few more states here soon. I am on the board for the IOCDF affiliate, state affiliate for Kansas, and I created the OCD exposure coloring books. So those are out there.
What a great segue.
Yes.
Because guys, this live is special because we are going to give away 2 of Amanda's coloring books. She has OCD specific coloring books. I believe they're available on Amazon. So if you were to go and just look up OCD coloring books in her name, yeah, they should be popping up. And I can I'll find the link and put them in. But we're going to, throughout the live tonight, we're going to give away 2 of those books. So Amanda's going to give one away. No CD is going to give one away. And they're amazing. They're super cool. My son loves them. He has no idea, obviously, what he's doing, but it's really fun. So we'll, at maybe like 5 or 10 minutes in, we'll do the first trivia question. And yeah, see if you guys can win yourselves an OCD coloring book. They're super cool. So yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jenna Overbaugh. I am a therapist here at NoCD. Been working with people who have OCD and anxiety for 10 or 12 years. I used to work at Rogers Memorial Hospital here in Wisconsin, used to work at Johns Hopkins University, and now I'm here at NoCD, carrying out our mission of trying to make ERP accessible, trying to reach people from all areas in the country and outside of the country. Opening up internationally too has been super exciting. So the way this is going to work, if you guys have questions, feel free to pop them on. We can see them. We won't get to all the questions, but we'll try our best to find questions that are going to be relevant to a lot of people, which is, not hard because OCD tends to come back to the basics, despite the content, despite the theme. So we'll get to it. Let me find a good one here. This is a good one. Lots of people struggle with this. Oh my goodness. So I've had 4 therapists tell me I have OCD, and I still think, what if I'm just making it up? Is sitting with uncertainty the only way to deal with this? I feel so guilty taking their time from others. So I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll let Amanda steal the spotlight here for a second, and then
Of course. So to this other Amanda, yeah, that is, I don't know about you, but I see this question pop up all the time. I kind of put this in the category what we call meta OCD, where it's like now we're having OCD about OCD or obsessions about obsessions, where now we're wondering like, do I really have OCD? Did I want these thoughts? What if I never get better? And we're going to respond to these intrusive thoughts in the same manner with that uncertainty, because even though you've gotten 4 therapists already saying you have OCD, like, as we know, reassurance does not work. And so you could have 100 tell you have OCD, but OCD is still going to make you doubt that a little bit. So we're going to respond in the same manner and just say, I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. Maybe I'm lying. Maybe I'm faking it. Maybe they don't know what they're talking about, because we can never get a 100% guaranteed answer. And so we're not going to try to keep trying to solve that.
Right. I agree 100%. And so I would add too, we've done research to show that as you engage in these reassurance seeking behaviors, as you engage in these checking behaviors, you would think common sense would tell you that as you engage in it more, that you would become more certain or more confident, but the actual opposite happens. So the more that you check in with your therapist about whether you really have OCD, the more that you check your locks, the more that you check the faucet, regardless of what it is, whether you're checking that you hit someone with your car, like whatever you're checking or just wanting to be sure of, you'd think that the more you do that, the more confident you'd be, but the inverse happens. So every time that you go and you ask your therapist or search online or reassure yourself, it makes sense in the moment. It makes you feel like I'm just going to be a little bit more confident this time, just one more therapist, and then I won't do it again, but it's going to happen again. It's going to make you be like, well, what if? What if that therapist didn't know what they were talking about? It is called the doubt disorder after all. So just be on the lookout for that. And yes, sitting with the uncertainty is really the only way through it. So it's going to feel like that leap of faith at first that, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so guilty taking up this time that could be left for others, and I'm doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. And I know that feels really scary, but we got to do it.
It reminds me a lot of health intrusive thoughts in that manner, in which we go to the doctor again. They tell us, oh, everything's fine. But then, that might work for a second. It might feel good for a second, but then the next week you're calling them again. And we've noticed that, as you mentioned with research, the more you continue in that reassurance, that compulsive behavior, the bigger that worry grows. And so we actually want to sit with that uncertainty of, maybe I do have this thing. Maybe I don't have this thing. Maybe the doctor doesn't know what he's talking about, which seems so dangerous and risky to ignore this, but there's not an actual danger present. Mm-hmm. So it just reminds me a lot of that reassurance seeking we see with health.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to what we said in the beginning, right? That reassurance is reassurance. OCD is OCD. I'm sure we'll get into that maybe with some additional questions coming up. So let's try to find another one. Okay, this would be a good one that I think a lot of people might struggle with, and we can give some quick tips on. So Ian, I have harm OCD and have thoughts and images of harming others. I don't really know what my triggers are or what my compulsions are. The thoughts seem to be random. How would I do exposure and response prevention in this case? So the thoughts will probably come on randomly, right? That is, it does tend to be somewhat of the experience of intrusive thoughts. Some of the nature of it being intrusive is that they feel like they come in kind of out of nowhere. What we do here at NoCD, and what I would always do with a client, is we would always start off with kind of a self-monitoring form of some kind, like a trigger monitoring form. And what that basically means is that you would go a couple days, maybe like in between your first session and your second session, after you kind of know just generally what compulsions are. Maybe you don't even know what yours are, but you just kind of know and you have that education. And then your goal would be to write down just some information about when you do get anxious. So had thought of harming, partner after argument. So then you can bring that back to your therapist, and it seems like conflict might be a trigger. It seems like maybe having an argument with your partner might be a trigger. And so then you and your therapist, once you've done that information collecting, then you can come up with them, and they can help you obviously come up with ideas for exposures based on that. So, really it's just taking that inventory of, I call it almost like a bird's eye view, like trying to, instead of just being on autopilot and doing, trying to put yourself in this bird's eye view situation. Like, what am I doing? Just get curious about what it is that you're doing, and the snap kind of decisions that sometimes we make when we're on autopilot mode. What do you have to say about that, Amanda?
Yeah, I was going to start off with the exact same thing, where usually those few weeks, between the first few sessions, between the consults, like those first few weeks of appointments, I'm having them do a lot of just monitoring and gaining awareness, and to just write down anything that, creates anxiety, and then write down what your response was, to get out those compulsions. I was also going to mention to Ian that a lot of times, I don't know about you, Jenna, like I could probably do the treatment with clients without ever even knowing the specifics, without ever even knowing what their thought is, what their compulsions 100%. Are. And so in this case, like we can always just teach the concept of ERP without even having to get into the specific content. Like if the client doesn't even know, it's like, well, we can still provide you the treatment. And then another thing that is helpful is sometimes finding out almost what is the root or the core of this fear. So even if you're not quite sure what the specific thought or image is, I can help the clients, any of you, to figure out, okay, what is your fear behind doing this harming act? right? Some people say it's a fear of going to jail, getting punished. Some will say it's related to religious fears of being punished by God or going to hell. Some will say it's a fear of if I hurt my kid, they're taken away by DCF or child services. And so if we can get at what the root is, why are these thoughts so scary, then we can do exposures to that fear. So it's not just an exposure to a harming thought, it's an exposure to you're going to hell, or you're going to get arrested, or your child's getting taken away. So we do a lot of work around like, what is the core fear behind this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Dr. Reed Wilson, I was just listening to a podcast on him the other day, and I don't know if it was recent or years ago, but he did a workshop in some international country, and it was just educational in nature. And he was collecting research on like, could he reduce someone's OCD symptoms by just like providing education about it? And I think that's kind of what you were saying, right? Like, or not just providing education, but can you basically, because he had a group of like 50 or 100 people in this workshop, and he didn't have time, obviously, to like learn this person's content, learn this person's content, learn this person's triggers. So he was doing kind of like a study or just like just kind of his own personal experience of like, can you reduce a person's OCD symptoms without ever getting into the nitty gritty? Like, can you just basically teach them ERP, give them like the very basics of it, and never have to get too into the nitty gritty? I love that. I think that's super.
I probably got some of it from him because in his workshops, he highly stresses the content does not matter. Like, I don't need to know the specifics. And I just love that because sometimes clients don't want to come in and tell you, or like in this case, aren't even aware of what are the specifics, what are the triggers. And it's like, okay, that's fine. We can still do treatment anyway. And I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Good questions, you guys. So maybe it's time for a trivia question. Okay. Let me get I have an idea. This is a random one. For those of you who don't know, really quickly, NoCD is hosting the virtual after party for the OCD Game Changers event on Saturday, May 29th. And so if you participate, there will be trivia there too. This is going to be a trivia question at the after party trivia. So feel free to like steal this and use it for the after party. So some of you might know Chrissy Hodges. Some of you out there might know her. She is known for her work with Pure O. She's a really big OCD advocate. She's known as Pure O Chrissy on Instagram. I would be really, if no one gets this is fine. We'll just have fun with it. But she recently got a new puppy. A couple weeks ago, she got a new puppy. What is the puppy's name?
Everyone's going to her.
That's okay.
Yes. Pure O Chrissy on Instagram. Go.
This is just the first trivia question that came to my mind.
I don't even know, but go to Pure O Chrissy on Instagram.
Yeah, go to Pure O Chrissy and
OCD Tears. That's more, her company.
Yes.
OCD Game Changers, all of her accounts. Stock it.
The first one to say, and if no one gets it by the time we're done answering the next question, I'll find an easier question. But that was, someone got it.
Is it Ollie?
It's Oliver, but I'll take Ollie.
I love it.
Thank you, Josh. Good job, Josh. So Josh, if you could email me at jenna.overbaugh@nocdhelp.com, email me and I'll make sure I get all the info for you. We'll get you a free coloring book. Puppies are superheroes against OCD. Yes.
That's awesome.
I'm so glad someone finally answered that question. Yes. So Chrissy Hodges, really awesome. She does a ton of work with Pure O. She's an incredible, incredible advocate. Oh my gosh. Her work is incredible. She's wonderful. And she just got a new puppy named Oliver. So yes, jenna.overbaugh@nocdhelp.com. Email me and I'll get all the information that we need. Cool. Let's keep going. That was fun.
Right.
I just want to give away your coloring books all night.
I'm impressed somebody figured it out.
I know. I don't even care. If you cheated, that's fine.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Da, da, da. We'll do this one. Amelia, I get vivid, intrusive images of doing a horrible action. They can be so vivid that later I fear that it wasn't an image, but actually was an action I did. How do I deal with this? What do you think, Amanda?
So the first thing that comes to mind is something we call false memory OCD. And again, all these categories are not important but sometimes they help people feel like they have a place, like they're not alone. But sometimes our mind can convince us, or OCD can try to convince us we really did do the thing. Maybe based on an image or maybe based on a thought. All of a sudden we're questioning, like, did that really happen? Guess what? And you're going to hear us probably say this a million times. We're going to respond to it in the same manner. I'm going to respond to not only that image with, oh, there's that image. Hello, welcome. I see you. That's fun. But I'm also going to then that subsequent intrusive thought saying, did that really happen? I'm going to respond in the same way. Like, oh, I'm having that thought. Like, maybe it did. Maybe I actually did that. And you'll notice by the manner in which I'm responding, it's responding in more of an accepting way. And by accepting, I don't mean you like it. You didn't like that image. You didn't like the idea that you've done it. But accepting meaning I accept that it's there. Images pop up in my head all day. Thoughts pop up. And I can accept the presence of those images and thoughts without having to like go down this rabbit hole of solving it. So for both that image and then the thought about did it actually happen, like I would respond with like, welcome, I see you, I hear you. Stay as long as you need without answering it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the key. And this, any of you can watch, on Netflix, they have a ton of them. Watch any like false confession documentary and you'll get all the information you need about how wild and impressionable our brains can be. So they've done tons of research to show, take a forensic psychology course and your mind will just be blown about how you can literally start to like accept or recall things that didn't actually happen because you've been convinced of it or you've convinced yourself or, the mind is just really, really kind of crazy in that way. And so the intention here I'm saying is that the more that you go back and you doubt it, or the more that you go back and try to answer that doubt, I should say, the less confident you're going to be. And so we can never be 100% sure, right? We can never be 100% sure. There are times of the day and days that are fuzzy for all of us, and we don't really necessarily know 100%. And we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with that doubt and not go back and try to sort through it and figure it out, because then it will feel good for a couple of seconds, but eventually we're going to feel that much more uncertain and that much more, uncomfortable. So yeah, it's really, really difficult in the moment, but definitely for the greater good to try to just let that doubt be there. This is interesting. I have some thoughts about this. So Allison, what do you suggest for when the maybe doesn't work and your thoughts get louder? So Amanda, you have a toddler, so you'll know and appreciate this. It probably will get louder.
Yeah.
Like, it will get louder whenever you suddenly stop ritualizing, right? So I call it anyway, it's called an extinction burst. So whenever you stop reinforcing something that you've typically reinforced for a long period of time, you temporarily see an increase in that unwanted behavior. So Amanda and I both have toddlers. Amanda has another one on the way. Let's say that we were used to always giving our kids a piece of candy when they ask for it. We've always reinforced them asking for candy by giving them candy. Let's say that all of a sudden now we have to flip the script and say, no, you're not getting any more candy. When we say no suddenly, we would never not expect our children to get louder. We anticipate that. That's just par for the course. Like, of course they're going to get upset. The same thing is going to happen with your OCD. And that's not just a fancy analogy. It's how our brains are wired to learn and unlearn these behaviors. And so when you've been reinforcing the OCD for a very long time by doing reassurance, other mental rituals, distraction, any other ritual that you can possibly imagine. So when you take that away and you just allow that to be there and you sit with that uncertainty, like Amanda and I have to every day, but you're not adding any additional ritualization on top of it, your OCD is going to be really upset. You're going to go through that little extinction burst where the images get more vivid, the thoughts become maybe more distressful, they maybe get louder. I always, and Amanda, you can probably speak to this too, people always tend to get worse before they get better. Like their second round of assessments in treatment are always, for the most part, higher than when they first started therapy. It's because things tend to get worse before they get better. But if you stay committed and you don't give in to that piece of candy and you don't give your kiddo the piece of candy, what eventually happens, they start to learn that there's a different way, that clearly me asking for this piece of candy isn't getting me what I want. So I'm going to stop asking for candy.
Mm-hmm. First of all, I love your metaphor because I'm living that right now with candy every day.
Same.
I often use either the metaphor is like a ping pong ball going back and forth. Think of a ping pong ball match, or we've talked about like the devil and the angel on your shoulder. Except I think of it as like that OCD voice and then ERP trying to speak back to it. And I always warn individuals that just because you do the treatment perfectly and you're like maybe doesn't mean OCD's like, oh, it's all better. I'm gone. I'm going to shut up now. It's like, oh, I need to try even harder. And so just kind of like the metaphor you were saying, it's going to get bigger and stronger and louder and more distressing for a moment. And biggest recommendation is like, don't give in. Every time that ping pong ball comes back, I want you to respond again with that maybe or that uncertainty. And it's going to try again. And we don't know how many times you're going to have to bat it down or how many days. But don't give in, because just like with the toddlers, it's like the second you're like, fine, just take candy. Guess what they learned? Oh, I only have to scream for 10 minutes before mom gives in. And it's the same. It's the same with OCD.
Yeah, 100%. So I always tell my members, like, if you wait to the peak of that temper tantrum or the peak of your panic to give into your ritual or to give the piece of candy, what have you just established for next time, right? Like my son's not going to ask nicely or, pout or whine. He's going to do whatever behavior got him the reward. He's going to do whatever behavior got him that thing. And so what that means in OCD is the next time you've just established a whole new status quo. You've just established a whole new level that the OCD is willing to go to get what it wants. And again, it's not just a fancy analogy, it's learning. It's how our brains learn.
Mm-hmm.
But yes. And so as difficult as it would be, we would tell people if what you want is to break up that relationship between asking for candy, getting candy, we would need you to not give the piece of candy. Even though it's uncomfortable to sit there and listen to the toddler, even though it's uncomfortable to see everyone in Target looking at you like you're crazy, oh my gosh. But if your goal is to, break up that relationship, you gotta stay strong and not give in to the candy. Yeah. Not that we take our advice. We say that, and when it comes to the actual candy situation, we don't take our advice.
Well, I had to laugh because I'm like, oh, we literally went through the candy thing today after daycare. And I'm like, oh, this is so true. This is how
100%. 100%. When everything that we're saying is obviously easier said than done. We understand that it's way harder to do in practice. That's why we honor you guys. Everything that you're doing is really, really difficult. And that's why we're here for you. Yes. Good questions. Good questions. A lot of good feedback for other people too. Dun, dun, dun. If you see anyone too, Amanda, you're welcome too.
No, I'm looking through it. Everyone's so nice and supporting each other. I love that.
I like this one. I think relationship OCD is something that people struggle with a lot. So my relationship OCD makes it hard to start relationships because I will go back and forth on whether I like someone or not. So relationship OCD, I feel like has probably always been there, but in the past 7 years has gotten a lot more research attention and a lot more clinical attention. So I think people are talking about it more and recognizing it more. Relationship OCD can come out in a lot of different ways, but I think the two, clear distinctions here are relationship focused and then partner focused. Amanda, do you want to go and give me your thoughts first?
I was just going to explain a little bit about relationship OCD, which first, it can be any kind of relationship. It's not just spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends. It can be a relationship with a coworker, your sibling, your child.
Their therapist.
Yes, their therapist, their pet. And while everybody has questions or doubts in their relationship, because I get this question a lot, people say, I thought it was normal, to wonder, is this the one? Yes, everybody has some questions and doubts. What happens a lot with a relationship OCD is, let's say I've been in a wonderful marriage for 40 years, and even though everything's fine, there's this random nagging thought saying, oh, you're going to cheat on him. Well, for the average person without OCD, that little thought just kind of floats on by. But for someone with OCD, we're like, why did I just think that? What does that mean? Am I going to cheat on him? And then start engaging in that compulsive behavior. So doubting these relationships, I think, is totally normal. We all do it. But then for relationship OCD, we look at like, what are those thoughts? How stuck are they getting? How distressing are they? Are you engaging in any compulsions? And guess what? Once again, we're going to say, like, we're going to apply the same principles of ERP to this. Yeah, maybe I'm going to cheat on my spouse at some point. Maybe I'm going to ruin a perfect marriage. I know I haven't been married 40 years, but we just exposed to that idea that we don't know. I can't answer that, nor do I need to answer just a random thought that pops up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing here that gets tricky for people is it's not about this person. It's not about this person who whatever this person is or whoever this person is. It's not about them and whether you like or don't like them. It's about relationships in general, right? Like it's always going to come back down to the need for you to feel 100% about someone. And so, maybe you say, yeah, I don't really like this person, so I'm just going to leave them, or, that's not the one for me. It's not 100%. It's not like the OCD is going to close shop and be done, right? Like it will just hop on to the next person. So unless you really truly go through it, you won't be able to get over it. And so in order to get through it, what that means is trying to be okay with things not being 100%. I always say, like, relationship OCD feels like like when you're searching for a song on Spotify and like you're searching for like R&B and it goes down to like maybe 1 million songs, and then you search for another filter that's like 2000s. Okay, now you're down to like 500,000 songs, and then you search for female artists and now you're down to like 250,000 songs. Like relationship OCD just puts so many filters on the right person and on the right relationship that you eventually will end up with nothing. Like we have to be okay opening up those filters a little bit. We have to be okay, because it's like any filtering system where relationship OCD is like, nope, I have to feel 100% sexually attracted to them. I have to feel 100%. They have to meet all of my personality characteristics. They have to be, everything that I thought that I always wanted. We can never have arguments. I have to never have any bad feelings or any bad signs. If I have any bad feelings, that's a sign that this isn't the right person for me. And if that's the case, then, those filters are so constricted, you're going to have nothing left to select from. So just opening those filters.
I got, like this comment's kind of mentioning this is about starting relationships, probably dating. And that's why I love the category of relationship OCD, because it's not just like, hey, my spouse, it's, somebody that's not even in a relationship. And as you mentioned, like the person can bounce from one to the next if it's not addressed. Every new person you meet, you start going through those questions. Is that the one? Are we going to be compatible? Am I going to get hurt? And then the compulsion, like maybe in this situation, is avoidance. Like, okay, I'm just not even going to do it. Mm-hmm. So we want to see, it can be for individuals dating as well. And is it keeping you from being in a relationship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Alrighty. I'm curious about your thoughts on this one. So, Percy, I don't necessarily have obsessive violent thoughts in my brain regularly, but I still feel a lot of anxiety sometimes. I feel like my harm OCD is causing this anxiety. Any advice? So a lot of times people who have OCD also present with what we call anxiety sensitivity. They're just really sensitive and kind of intolerant to feelings of physiological distress. So these are individuals who don't like it when their heartbeat is racing, when their respiration is up, when they're feeling tingly, basically anything that's associated with that kind of fight or flight. They don't like that. Don't like that feeling. Don't like that feeling. And so while those feelings are not preferable, I think for a lot of us, like I would never prefer to feel dizzy over not. I would never prefer to feel short of breath over not. I still do it all the time. I work out. I will spin my child around. I love roller coasters. So I'm willing to feel that discomfort because my brain doesn't interpret it as threatening, but someone with anxiety or someone with high anxiety sensitivity would probably interpret that as threatening. So something that might be helpful in this scenario is interoceptives. So they're pretty much like body exposures. There are things like spinning around in a chair, holding your breath, breathing really quickly, things like that. So if someone is kind of having just a lot of like baseline anxiety throughout the day and they just feel in their body kind of feel physiologically ramped up, we might talk a little bit more about anxiety sensitivity, because chances are they don't like that feeling. And so when they start to feel that way, they start to ruminate about how they feel. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling that way again today. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I don't want to feel that way. Do other people feel this way? This is so weird that I'm feeling this way. And then what does that do but makes you more anxious, and that anxiety makes you feel more physiological distress. So it can kind of just be where you're stuck in this loop of physiological anxiety, which is not pleasant. So the name of the game there too would be interoceptives. So body exposures, they work the same way as regular exposures, but they work to decrease your anxiety sensitivity, or how sensitive you are to those physiological perceptions of threat. Do you have any other suggestions, Amanda?
Same thing, the interoceptive exercises. This might sound similar to panic attacks or panic disorder because it's treated in the same manner. We often have anxiety about anxiety. We have anxiety about what our body's doing because we want to know, what is that? Why is my heart racing? Is something wrong? Am I going to die? And so what do we do in treatment? It probably sounds so mean, is we're going to purposely get your heart racing, get your anxiety up, just like exposures with OCD. That way we can almost just sit with that discomfort and habituate to that feeling. And again, also watching for, are there any compulsive behaviors? Do you immediately like pop a PRN med? Do you immediately like, oh, I got to drink a glass of cold water to make this go away? And instead just get comfortable with those physical feelings. So what I find fascinating with basically anxiety about our body, anxiety about anxiety, is that we experience these symptoms all day, every day. When I run up the stairs, my heart races. When I go out in the heat, I sweat.
And Amanda's pregnant, you guys.
No, I'm feeling all this right now. When I, if I spin in a chair, I get dizzy. But we don't tend to get anxious when we know the cause, right? Because we feel like uncertainty. Well, my heart's racing because I ran up the stairs. But with anxiety, like there's that uncertainty piece where we're like, why is my heart racing? And so we feel this need to like, oh, I have to figure this out, or I need to stop it and make this feeling go away. And instead, we're going to help you just become comfortable with the racing heart and not knowing. And by the way, I apologize. My toddler obviously woke up because she is running upstairs. If you hear footsteps, I'm sorry.
I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it until you pointed it out. But yeah, now she's like,
that's all I hear.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. I totally relate. It's that time. It's like bedtime. So I get it. So this is something I have a couple tips for. Ryan, health anxiety here. Any tips on reducing reassurance seeking behaviors? When I get a legitimate physical symptom, I catastrophize and my reassurance seeking skyrockets. So first things first, it will feel legitimate, and it might be. So I just want to recognize that. It's really difficult. Health anxiety can feel so alarming because our brains are meant to keep us alive, right? So, and this is a good point to note too. I know, Amanda, you feel like you educate us about this a lot, which is that anxiety is a good thing. Anxiety is meant to keep us alive. If we didn't have anxiety, we would all be dead. Right?
We would run out into the street in front of that car. Or
yeah, absolutely. Like we would all be in a really bad spot. So anxiety is here to serve a purpose. And so your brain here is trying to do what it's meant to do, which is to keep you alive. But we have to recognize that sometimes those alarm signals can go off when it's not necessarily legitimate, and it can become too much. We can interpret threat when there's not actual threat. And so as far as reducing reassurance seeking behaviors, the best thing that you could do is to resist completely. That's the best thing you could do. Now, with that said, that might be too difficult, especially in those moments when you're really, really struggling and it feels really real. What you could do instead is you could play around with two different strategies. You could reduce the ritual. So let's say there are different levels of rituals, and it would depend on the person. It would depend on the situation for everybody. But let's say that you could either, what you really want to do, like what would be the most satisfying to your OCD would be to go to the emergency room. That would eliminate all of my anxiety and I would feel great. Let's say that, we wouldn't want you to do that. Like our goal is we don't want you to do a ritual that's going to alleviate all of your anxiety, right? Like that's back to the kid example with the candy. If my kid is asking for, what does he likes donuts. He loves donuts. So if my kid is asking for a donut, I'm trying to break that behavior of him asking for donuts. I'm not going to get him like the most gourmet donut ever, right? Like if my goal is to
eventually eliminate them.
Yeah, like I'm not like by giving him like the creme de la creme of donuts, like I'm kind of asking for it next time, right? So point being, we don't want you to get rid of your anxiety completely with a ritual. That's very reinforcing. It's like giving the monster of OCD a complete feast. We don't want you to do that. So what we could do instead is have you reduce a ritual and have you do something that maybe takes the edge off a little bit, but is not completely fulfilling. So something that my son likes, but not very much, is Tootsie Rolls. No one really likes Tootsie Rolls, right? So, but let's say that I'm in a pinch, or like during a wedding or during something where he's like freaking out and he wants a donut. I don't want to give into it completely, but I'll give him a Tootsie Roll. It's enough to kind of like take the edge off and get him to like be quiet for what we need. Still would have been great for me to resist it completely if what I want is to like extinguish that relationship, but it's a reduction, right? So it's enough to kind of like just take the edge off and get us moving in the right direction. So maybe instead of going to the emergency room, Ryan, maybe you still wouldn't really prescribe it because it could be a dirty, nasty rabbit hole, but maybe you Google online for 1 minute. Maybe you ask reassurance from like a friend or your parent versus a doctor, an emergency room doctor. Something that's going to still leave you a little bit unsure, but not something that's going to, fulfill you completely. You could also try to postpone it. So this is another tactic that you could do, just ritual postponing. I'm not going to go to the doctor right now. I'm going to see how I feel. If I still feel this way tomorrow, then I'll go. In the analogy with that, with my son, is I'm not going to give you a donut right now, but you can have one when we get home. Great. But it's better than having it be immediate. We don't want, the learning that you're doing, we don't want it to be immediate, right? So when you're training a dog to sit, you give them the treat as soon as they sit. And that's great to pair it like that when you're trying to establish a behavior. When you're trying to break a behavior, you want it to be, there should be some time in there. So, resisting is always going to be the best way if what you want is to break up that relationship. Now, if that's too difficult, which totally makes sense and it totally happens, that's why therapists are here. You could play around with reducing that ritual. You could also play around with postponing rituals. Something that I've been playing around with too is taxing rituals. I just learned about this and I'm like super stoked to use it more. So if you ritualize, have some type of tax on it. Like, okay, if I'm going to ritualize, I am going to give someone $1. If I ritualize, I have to message my therapist. At NoCD, you can message us. If I ritualize, I have to message my therapist and tell her that I did that. So put a little tax on there. Like it might make you just stop for pause and ask yourself like, whoa, do I really want to do that right now? Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, I'm so glad we're talking about this, whether specifically around health anxiety or something else. I don't feel like we talk about response prevention strategies enough. Most people, when they hear about the response prevention part, they just think, oh, don't do the compulsions. And I say the same thing, like, yes, ideally that would be great. Just don't do any of the compulsions. Just stop all of them. But it's so hard. So there's actually a lot of different strategies that can be used to reduce them over time. And again, like Jenna's saying, and I say all the time, yes, in an ideal world, we would just not ask for reassurance, but I'm also realistic and that's hard to cut out. So I do the same thing with postponing or, almost taking it down a step, like, okay, you with your emergency room example. I love the taxing one. I was going to add a couple of response prevention strategies specifically for reassurance. One of my favorites is, okay, if you, even if you don't decrease it, we can change the response from the other person. So I get, the spouse on board, the mom on board, the teacher on board and say, okay, we're working on reducing the reassurance, but until that happens, I need you to respond in this manner. And so maybe you go to your wife and say, am I dying? And her response is going to be, I don't know. Right. And that's going to, I mean, cause anxiety at first, as we talked about with feeding the monster.
Our job is so fun.
No, I feel so mean. Spouses love this, though. They love when they get to finally not give that reassurance. So that's one idea. And one that I use more with kiddos, but it would work for adults. I let them write down their reassurance questions in a notebook. And it's kind of like that delayed response. Like maybe the parent, they'll write in the notebook and answer it at the end of the day or one time a week. So it's kind of that postponing. And it's also decreasing that urge. Like I got to run to mom and ask her every single time. And instead it's like, write it down and I'll get to it when I can. Or even sometimes like as we continue to build up these strategies to eventually just reduce it, eventually the parent or the spouse will write an uncertain response in that book. Am I dying? And the spouse writes, who knows, maybe. And that's just almost one step in that direction of completely eliminating it. But like as Jenna and I both said, like, yes, ideally we'd love to, but sometimes we need a little help in the process.
That's okay. We're all human.
Exactly.
Yeah. And another thing that I think is helpful, especially for kids, is like little reassurance tokens. And I mean, you could do it with any type of compulsion for sure, but reassurance is a good one. So basically having like something physical and tangible is really helpful, whether they're like old movie tickets or raffle tickets, or you could even make some with like laminated cards or something like that. But basically like agreeing on a number that's challenging but manageable. And like, I have 3 chances to ask for reassurance today. And every time I do that, I have to relinquish one of these tokens. And ideally, over time, you'll go from 3 to 2 to 1. And then I think it just helps you, instead of just boom, 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 I'm just going to ask at my free will, and I'm going to go on autopilot. It really helps you get into that mode of like, I have 2 left. Do I really want to ask that right now? Do I really want to ask that
right now? For a little while. I love that.
Yeah. So finding a way to get some more like skin in the game too, I think is really important, whether that's like with tangible tickets or something. But I love going back to like the very simple strategies of postponing rituals and reducing rituals. Cool. Awesome. Yes, my husband is great at helping not feed my reassurance. That's awesome. As a therapist, I love that your husband doesn't give into your reassurance, because it makes our job a lot easier. It makes your job a lot easier too, not in the moment, but in the overall. You're welcome.
Here, can I choose one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Click on it? I don't know if I click on it. It might not let me. Okay, I don't know how to bring it up.
If you just read it, I'll try to find it.
Lilia. And it says response prevention for rumination. And I just leave the obsession and not respond. It's still hanging out.
Hanging out.
Yes, I love that. So yeah, if you think of, if rumination is your compulsion, this like, this urge to just like deep dive into the thought and just cycle on it and just solve it. Like if that's the compulsion, then obviously response prevention is going to be doing something different or opposite, or, a little unsettling. And so this might be, if my client has a rumination compulsion, yes, ideally, as we've said, we just stop ruminating. But that is so hard. Like I would never tell my client, just stop ruminating. Instead, it's going to be like, okay, every time you start to cycle down that path, I want you to go do some act of mindfulness, like step outside and just notice what you hear and see and smell, some kind of grounding technique. Or every time you start to ruminate, I want you to, hey, go play this Sudoku, do something. What that's doing is saying, it's basically, of course, like not doing the rumination, not doing the compulsion, but saying, I'm going to ignore that dangerous thought and not solve it right now, and instead do something totally, completely different, which is going to feel awful because your OCD brain wants to ruminate. But this is also helping you get back probably to your valued behaviors of, how do I really want to live my life right now? Like, do I want to sit here for an hour and think on this topic? Or do I want to go and play with my kids? So that might actually be our response prevention strategy, is when you start to ruminate, I want you to like, just go and play a game, right? Something opposite. Now I'm going to add in a caveat, because sometimes distraction is the compulsion. So, because I'm sure there's some people hearing, listening to this saying, well, I thought distraction was bad. Every case is different. Every individual is different, which is why we have to assess what your compulsions are. Now, if your compulsion is to distract and not think the thought to avoid anxiety, your response prevention strategy is like, no, I'm going to just have you sit there and think about it even more. I'm just going to have you sit there and maybe repeat it. So distraction doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It's not always a good thing. It's going to be very just individually tailored to your treatment.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's good distraction and bad distraction. So I think of bad distraction as like, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think about this. So I'm going to go and do this other thing instead. I think of good distraction as like, okay, I'm anxious right now and I need to move on with my life.
Yeah, I think of it as like I'm refocusing my attention, which sounds like distraction, but it's intentional. Like I'm purposely doing this to, do my ERP treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always tell my members, like, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. So you can go and play a board game with your family if that was your normally scheduled programming and still not be sure of if you offended someone earlier in the day, right? So you just need to be resisting solving that problem. So as you are playing that board game or watching that movie or going out to dinner, and you have those thoughts pop up of like, are you sure? Are you sure? You still want to just practice ritual prevention. Yep, there's that thought again. And come on back, right? So you can do both. And so I don't think that that's necessarily distraction, right? Like you're just living your life. You are continuing to move on with your regularly scheduled programming. And that anxiety can either be there or not be there. That intrusive thought can either be there or not be there. But you're not going to do anything to make it worse. And you're not going to do anything to make it better. You're just going to get on with your normally scheduled programming. And so rumination is going to always be an attempt to try to answer some type of question. So a lot of times intrusive thoughts come up in the form of questions, and rumination is your attempt to solve that question. And so I think it's really interesting when people are like, but how do I resist rumination? And it's like, it's the opposite of sitting with uncertainty. Like you cannot do both at the same time. They're kind of like discrepant processes. So if you are ruminating and you're trying to figure something out, you are trying to kind of like close a book on something, you are trying to get an answer, you're trying to get clarity on something, you cannot do that and sit with uncertainty at the same time. An analogy that I use is it's kind of like holding on to a basketball, like really, really securely, like this feels really important. This feels really important. I need to figure it out. Like, I just want to hold on to this. We're asking that you would try to let it go. It feels really hard, but we need you to try to sit with that doubt, not answer that question, to try to let go of that basketball. And it will feel horrible. It will feel like you're doing yourself a disservice. It will feel like there's something important that you're leaving out. All of those things are okay to feel. Your only responsibility is to not answer that question, whether that's with distraction or not. As long as it's, you can still be uncertain. You can still be resisting rumination, even though you're doing all these other things.
So should we do our other book giveaway?
Right. I was just looking up my trivia. Let's see. I was trying to do a little bit of an easier one. Okay. So, that might be too easy. I have really good trivia questions. This was like the highlight of my job that week, was coming up with trivia questions.
That's awesome.
Okay. All right. Okay. So some of you might know that Stephen Smith, our CEO and founder of NoCD, he made the Forbes 30 under 30 list for healthcare and for big money startups. Pretty big accomplishment. How old was he when he made that list? It was the Forbes 30 under 30.
Start Googling. I don't know this one.
I mean, there's only probably like 10 right answers, right?
It's true. Just start putting them in, guys. Guess
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's funny. Somebody said 28. 28. Guessing that's not it. I don't know.
I hope it's not the number I have. I have to like double check now.
27. There's a 26, 29.
Forbes under 4.
There's a 24.
I have 27. So yeah.
Crystal?
I think I got, the article that I'm looking up is 27. So
Crystal Cara was the first one.
first. Oh my gosh, there's so many numbers here. You guys love trivia. I want to do more giveaways.
Oh,
All right, I think it was Crystal Cara. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Crystal, we'll go with Crystal. So yes. So Crystal, if you want to go ahead and email me at jenna.overbaugh@nocdhelp.com, we'll make sure you get an OCD coloring book. You guys are awesome. Chloe, you are my spirit animal. I'm typing in all the different numbers.
that would have been me.
That is so good. Cool. Well, I'm having a lot of fun.
I know.
We have time for one or two more questions.
Yeah.
If you guys love trivia, let me know. Maybe we can give away some more goodies. This was really cool. All right. Okay. Counting has been always something that's a little bit tricky for me. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. So Shannon Marie, I had OCD all my life, but managing it by myself. Way to go. Good for you. That's great. That's wonderful. One major thing that has been hurting me is counting everything I do. Like I always use so much soap and hand washing. I don't know why I count and repeat actions. So the counting can feel really automatic for people. And I feel for them in some capacities more than I do in other scenarios, because it's like, it can feel so automatic to them. And so, yeah, what are your recommendations here?
Yeah. So, and I even give permission, like, to not try to solve why you are counting or repeating. I mean, obviously we both probably, Jen and I probably have theories on why this is, because is a compulsive behavior, but we're going to focus on reducing those behaviors. So let's say if every time you feel like I need to count how many, I don't even know. I've had somebody that's like counted ceiling tiles. And so we would try to do something different where she would sing her ABCs or something that almost doesn't allow the counting behavior to happen. Or if it's a repeating
banner.
Yeah, exactly. Or if it's a repeating behavior, a repeating compulsion, then, and let's say, oh, I have to do it 3 times. I might have you do it twice and then stop and feel really yucky until eventually we just do it once. So I give you permission to not even figure out why we're doing it. Rather, okay, this is my compulsion. I feel this urge that I have to, whether it's just this just right feeling, or you feel like it's solving something or making anxiety go away, we're going to respond in a different or opposite manner.
Mm-hmm. And I know it can feel so isolating to do these things. I know it can feel so frustrating. Like, I just want to know why. I just want to know why. Oh, why do I do these things to myself? We would call that kind of in and of itself an engagement response. It's one of those ways that you can engage the OCD, meaning make it worse. That's not really a compulsion, but it's still an engagement strategy. And so by the simple nature of just like, oh, why am I having these thoughts? Oh my gosh, why am I having these thoughts? I just want these thoughts to go away. Oh my gosh, just stop. You are feeding the OCD through the back door. And I know it's hard to not do that, but we would encourage non-engagement strategies. So we would encourage things like accepting all thoughts, being okay with all thoughts, and continuing to do what it is that you want to do anyway. So what that means practically for Shannon Marie is, you know, this is frustrating every once in a while. And I'm here. I'm accepting of it. I don't know why I do this. I'm never going to know 100%, but I have some good skills. I have some tools. I got some, feedback from those therapists on that live, and I'm going to try to practice it. I don't know why. I don't know why these things happen, but
we don't need to solve that thought either. That's just another thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's good to know. Yeah. I mean, doing anything that's going to be kind of discrepant with the counting. So going into situations where you typically would want to count, like hand washing, or, if it's ceiling tiles or stairs or whatever, and intentionally having that counter strategy of, I'm going to sing the Star Spangled Banner instead, and just let your OCD feel flustered. Let the OCD feel like something's up. This isn't right. I don't like this. And be okay with that feeling. Let your anxiety feel that way, and give yourself the experience that it can feel a little bit flustered. It doesn't have to feel 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
And then Crystal, you mentioned, I think you were asking again what my email was. It's jenna.overbaugh@nocdhelp.com. So jenna.overbaugh@nocdhelp.com. And we did get the other person their book, so we're good to go. We have one more.
I'll pick one if it's okay.
What's that?
I'll pick one if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
See if you can find it. From Aurora. She actually had a couple questions about existential OCD, but one of them was, existential thoughts make me wonder what is the point in life, and then I obsess over finding the answer, even though I know that no one knows the answer. And that's the age-old question, laugh out loud. And I just want to bring this up because I love existential OCD, because there's so much uncertainty in the world, but bring on this topic and like there's none. No one can say what. That's one of them. But yeah, there's another one just a little below. Nobody can tell you what the purpose of life is. And no one can tell you if we're really here or it's all a dream, or no one can tell you what's going to happen after. There's theories. So to me, this is one of the end all be all uncertain thoughts or images or urges. And so we're going to respond in the same manner of like, yeah, maybe I have no purpose in life, or yeah, maybe I'll never find it, or maybe I will waste my one life here on earth, which I'm sure for some people hearing this, they're like, that's an awful idea. But the thing is, like, we can't answer that. So how much time and effort are you wanting to really put in solving that, causing so much stress? And instead become comfortable with just the idea of like, I will never know. And I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. This reminds me of a really beautiful Instagram picture and post that I saw one day. I forget who posted it, but it was like, I'd rather live fully not knowing than try to live half-heartedly trying to figure out something I can't figure out. And so that really rings true for me here, is like, I work with so many people who try to, they spend so much time, whether it's a fear of regret or fear of missing out or fear of there being this other life that could have been happier or whatever. And they literally miss out and they create all those issues for themselves because they are living kind of half-heartedly trying to figure out, what's the purpose of life? What's the purpose of all this? Are we even real? Like, oh my gosh. And we'll never know. These are all questions that Amanda will never know, that I'll never know, that my husband upstairs will never know. We will all never, ever know these questions. And so this is a really good point to talk about too. Like, usually, especially when it comes to our core fears, they're all things that we all are terrified of. So fears of being alone, fears of dying, fears of doing something that we regret, fears of being, exiled from society, fears of guilt and shame and being uncomfortable forever. Again, these are things that I have to deal with and live with and cope with on a day-to-day basis. This is what Amanda has to deal with and cope with on a day-to-day basis. It's just that OCD comes in and says, hey, Aurora, if you do these rituals the way that I tell you to do it, somehow you'll be safe. And that's not true. That's not true. Like, you could do all of those rituals. You could do all the pondering. You could do all the ruminating. You could do all the reassurance seeking, all the philosophical thinking, and still not know the meaning of life. And that's something that we all have to kind of carry with us. And we take those risks, right? Like, it's all a risk. The same way that when we get into a car every morning, we take that risk. I might get in a car accident and die. It's just a risk that we are willing to take because we don't want to relinquish our autonomy, our independence. So it's all a risk. And so the risk here is, are we wanting to kind of live halfway, trying to figure out these things that we can't figure out? Or do we want to try to take that risk not knowing and live fully?
I think that comes back to that idea of living a values-based lifestyle. How do I cannot talk now, it's too late. How do I genuinely want to live my life if OCD wasn't guiding my decisions, if anxiety wasn't driving any certain behaviors? How would I want to live this life? And as you mentioned, I would just want to be 100% present and live it fully without without OCD like stopping me and making me analyze everything or try to solve everything. So especially when it comes to existential thoughts, I'm like, how do I genuinely want to live this life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great lighthouse to leave everybody with, which is, what would I do if my anxiety and my fear wasn't part of the equation? Like, who's running the show here? Is it OCD? Is it my values? What would I be doing if OCD was not part of the equation? And I think sometimes that can get a little tricky, but for the most part, I think people know. And I think That's kind of what I tell my members. Try to use that as your lighthouse. What would I do if OCD was not in the picture? So yeah, that brings us to the end of our little chat. Amanda, this is
That was fun.
yeah, I love the little giveaways that we did, and all of you guys had great questions, great feedback. Amanda, why don't you give them one last little shout out where they can find more of you? I know you have a lot of tools and resources like on your website and stuff. So yeah, just give us one more kind of rundown of where people can find you.
Yeah, so for social media, I'm on Instagram and Facebook the most, and my handle is @anxiety OCD treatment. So look me up, especially if you got one of the coloring books, post it. I want to see your pictures, or if anybody else goes and gets them. I love, and I get all the time, people sending me their colored pictures of like hell or pedophile or whatever. I love that, and I will definitely share it with my followers. So, and my website is amandalcpc.com. And as Jenna mentioned, there's some free resources on there, or just a lot of different recommendations.
Awesome. Yeah, this was so much fun. I will be back next week with another awesome guest from the OCD community. We are super excited to do these things with you guys. Amanda, thank you so much. It was fun. And obviously such like a breath of wealthy knowledge, so many good things that came from this. So everyone's really appreciative of you, Amanda. Everyone says that this was great. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you next week.
Bye.